Ready? Wait for it.
Welcome, everybody, to a live edition of the Rock Pile Report podcast. Just to get this off the top, every single week this summer during the off season, and maybe into the season, I don't know, we'll play it by ear. We're going to be going live here on YouTube now that Chris has convinced me that it was important to invest in all the technological infrastructure that we currently have. Chris, I got to say you outdone yourself. This is nice.
I mean, I'm trying over here. I mean, it's new. We've never done live stuff before, so it's all new.
Now, are there comments turned on here? Is there?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know who's in. I don't know who's in here. We have
Out of
one.
the gate, it really doesn't matter, does it? I mean, at this point in time, I guess what I'm trying to say is, guys, we've never asked you to subscribe to anything, and I still don't think you should. But if you want to be part of the conversation, you want to be able to watch live, leave comments, say things that I can react to, or have no choice but to react to, go ahead and give our YouTube page a follow. That way you get notifications whenever we schedule a live episode. We're going to be doing it all summer long. Like I said, maybe into the season. Chris is going to get this thing nailed down, and it'll be running like a well-oiled machine by the time week one comes, right?
Allegedly.
We got a lot to go over tonight. We're going to talk about the Terry Pegula legacy planning situation. We're going to talk about the fifth-year extension for Greg Rousseau and all of the various implications and ideas around it. But I want to start with this concept, Chris, with the ending of draft season, as you all like to call it. Chris turned me on to this interesting dynamic in a hockey league that he plays in. So imagine a world where you sign up, like when I sign up for softball, I have my team. I know who's on my roster. I know what the team's going to be. I know what it's going to look like. And so I register my team, and then my team goes out there and plays, and it's my hand-picked whoever I can get, and that's what you have. Chris plays in what's called a draft league.
It's 30 and over.
30 and over. Everybody signs up and just gets assigned to a roster. And they just make up a team.
Okay. You can get I think it's one or two people. So if someone else is playing, you can sign up and request to be on their team, which is usually granted. But I don't know anyone. I mean, I know people that are in the league, but I'm not reaching out going, hey, are you playing 30 and over? Want to be on the same team?
Chris,
I'm just put me on a team.
on the way to the podcast tonight, I texted you with a question about what we were going to have for dinner, and you didn't look at your phone for like a 50-minute period of time where I was finally forced to make an executive I have no doubt in my mind that if you're not checking your phone on that level in the middle of a conversation like that, you probably don't have many friends you're going to reach out to about, hey, oh, shucks, you want to play some hockey together?
No, not a chance at all.
With that said, I found it interesting that in this draft league, they get to see Chris's statistics. And so that's kind of how they're like, so they did like an exposition night where guys come out and skate and do a little thing, and they can kind of see the guy who's doing like the people who are doing the assignments can figure out who needs to go where, what their skill level might be. They told Chris he doesn't have to come. We have your stats. Is it weird that a group of people who are just looking at your box scores are going to pick your team based on it?
I played in that league for, since like 2016, 2017. So, like, when they see my name, they know who I am and what teams I played for.
Like you're the guy
before.
who scored 8 goals and 3 assists in a game last year?
That was a couple years ago, but yes, that happened.
Okay. So given the fact, guys, I know I crap all over him in his roller hockey, but he's actually very good at it. What round pick do you think you are? In the hierarchy, you figure how many teams are there?
14.
So out of 14 teams, when they're going down the list saying, where do we slot a guy like Chris Kruger? Are you a first, second, or third round talent?
I would probably say second. I probably used to be a first round. Like if I was 30 and immediately joined 30 and over, then yeah, first round talent all day. But I have a herniated disc in my back. So
Wait, so you're gonna get flagged for a medical,
yes.
and at the same time, even with a medical, you still think you're a second round pick?
Yeah.
I love it. Now the medical makes sense because I was about to say I was gonna hit you with the Dwight Schrute and Jim when he's talking about how when Dwight says he owns a bed and breakfast with Satan, and he goes, "In your wildest dream, you are the co-manager." You are the co-manager of a bed and breakfast. You're not even the boss, and you only make $80,000 a year.
I don't know if Roloski's in here, but somebody wrote, it's from Doug. Drew needs to grow a huge mustache.
I actually used to have a mustache. It's one of the more offensive things anyone's ever seen because being half Latino, it does form like this real stereotypical push broom on top of my lip, and it's thin. It doesn't get bushy. And I also tried to grow a goatee for the longest time, and it would never connect here. But not just like a spot. There's like a 3-inch gap. So now it really, like if I were to fill this in and fill this in, it really looks like I'm trying to be one of the Three Musketeers, and that's not a good look for anybody.
No.
It's not a good look for anybody. Guys, draft season is over for us. It's on for Chris. And we have other fish to fry. You know, the news never stops churning. In this week's Bills News Update, we kick it off with we're talking about the legacy planning of the Pegula family. I think a lot of people were surprised. You know, Tim Graham started the whole thing with a tweet the other night about how Terry Pegula was transferring a small percentage of stake in the team, ownership stake in the team to his daughter, Laura Pegula. And a lot of people went, who? What? Laura Pegula? I don't know that lady. See, now for me, for all the work that I've done and Chris has done and our frequent guest, Ryan Lasel has done on the stadium situation, you can probably guess I'm kind of a nerd about the business of sports, right? Like the inner workings, the power structures, the negotiations, how money actually gets made in the NFL and for the Buffalo Bills is really interesting to me. That's the stuff that I nerd out over. Because if you think about it, that's typically what drives decisions farther on down the chain, like scheduling or international expansion. A lot of these things are impacted by how the league's economic model works. So I follow the Sports Business Journal. And in September, they posted an article about Laura Pegula, who is Terry's daughter from a previous marriage. Kim's stepdaughter, which I don't know if that's an important distinction or not. Time will tell. I don't know. I don't know what her relationship with the other siblings is like. No idea. Laura Pegula was going with her father and attending league meetings and learning more of the sports business on the team's behalf as far back as September. And he made a point that we've made on this podcast and that we've done other shows about. The idea that they've had kind of a tumultuous process, right? Like the process of hiring for the Pegula family. They made a note that it hasn't gone well. There's been a lot of turnover. And so this is the first member of the Pegula family to be brought in for more than just designing a hat or for, hey, we're going to pump a makeup line. This was a member of the Pegula family, besides Kim, being brought in to kind of start learning the ropes of the business and how the inner workings of the NFL operate. Now, that role seems to have changed and grown over the course of the last year. And it also seems, Chris, like she's more and more becoming a face of our team.
Makes sense.
I mean, she attended the owners' meetings in February in Phoenix with her dad, which is likely a precursor to all of this, right? Like, hey, I'm familiar. I want you to get familiar with these people. I want you to meet the other owners. I want them to get to know you. Like, not just you to get to know them and you to see how these meetings are run, but also I want to be able to put you in front of them and have you talk to Steve Biscotti. Have you have a conversation with Jerry Jones, although hopefully that's from like 15 feet away.
Yeah, and Robert Kraft.
Robert Kraft wouldn't even be there. He's down the street. He's down the street getting a massage. when you look at her jacket, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like her profile, she has a background in project management and public relations. She last worked for an e-commerce and drop shipping company called Ecom Evo. Now, they worked in coffee and other
Do you think
things
she's
of
got
that
a
nature.
LinkedIn?
I already looked at it. Yeah. No, I already looked at it.
Did Iman send it to you?
No, because I unfortunately have a LinkedIn and I just went and found it. So in fact, it's funny if you just Google it and you click on it, it won't let you see it. You have to be logged in and be looking at it from your own, likely so that she can see everybody who's looking at hers, which is kind of like, does anybody think that that's creepy on LinkedIn? Like, first of all, LinkedIn feels like a pointless exercise anymore. Does anybody actually care? Do you have one?
Yeah, I have LinkedIn. Did you see what I put in our group chat and tagged Iman
No.
on it? I'll have to pull it up.
So you don't need, so wait, so you have one.
Yeah.
What do you use it for?
For this. I don't have my actual job listed on it.
It's like
We've gone through this before many of times.
It's like a certain.
You were the reason I don't put my actual job out on the internet in any form,
Oh, yeah, 'cause
on
someone
any
might come and take shots at
social
you.
media profile that I have.
Someone might come and try to get you canceled. It's hilarious.
I'm going to assume that this is Doug again. Doug Orlowski, allegedly. I hope when she takes over the team, she hires Steven Seagal as head of security.
We were, guys, for those of you who showed up and watched the hashtag sports live stream that we did on Friday night, first of all, thank you for attending. We were busting Mario's balls about the idea that Mario Granata from hashtag sports, we were like, you should be forced to attend at least one podcast with us where we don't address it at all, but you show up dressed like Steven Seagal based on your stupid hair. Like you come in here in like a high collar kimono with sunglasses on, even though we're inside, and then you just talk really quietly, and we just don't address it. We don't talk about it at all. Either way, the woman has a business background, okay? And when you think about it,
That thing. Look at that.
Yes.
I proposed to my girlfriend this weekend. Here's what it taught me about business-to-business sales.
This is why LinkedIn sucks. It's because it's a whole bunch of people trying to hawk a bunch of nonsense and seem like they're smart about the thing that they do for a living. I'm not going to lie. If you're a dork enough, like it's one thing to be good at what you do for a living. It's another thing to have to try to tell people how good you are at what you do. Unless you're selling a product, don't talk to me about your job. Don't speak to me about it unless I ask. It's nonsense. I hate it all, and it's literally how all these cold callers with different like financial products find you. I hate it. But either way, I found his daughter on LinkedIn, looked at her jacket. She's got a pretty decent career in business, which is important because when you think about it, what do her siblings know? Jesse Pegula made comments about what things might look like after her tennis career was over. That was some of the first public commentary we got when Kim got sick. And so it's hard when you hear her coming out and being like, hey, at a certain point when my career winds down, I'm going to come back and I'll get more involved and I'll do more things. But it was really kind of a gray area as to what she would be more involved in. But then you have to take a step back and go, what does someone who's been groomed from childhood as a pro tennis player know about the business of the NFL? Like, I'm not saying former athletes can't go on and do things, but I guess the question would be, how much are you going to trust a former pro athlete to step in and, I don't know, Chris, do your job?
Oh, yeah? Did you trust Michael Jordan as a owner?
Yes, the owner.
As was it Charlotte Bobcats? Is that what he owned?
I think they were the Wizards. And
no,
then,
there's the Washington Bullets and then Washington Wizards. But then after he stopped playing, he owned the Charlotte Bobcats. Or
wasn't he like owner player at one point? Can you Google this?
He was He was not a Reg Dunlop. He was. I'm quite sure he was a minority owner in the Charlotte Bobcats and sucked at it.
Well, I mean, he was bad his last year in basketball. Give that a Goog. I don't know why, but I have this thing of him being a player owner. I don't know why I have that associated with Michael Jordan. Maybe I'm putting some smut on the man's name, in which case I apologize. But
there you go.
I don't know about whether he was good in business or not. He definitely got his dad killed.
That was the thing.
He definitely got his father killed. So there's that. I just think it would be hard to assume. Like, you've watched ex-players become GMs. That happens all the time in hockey, Chris, right?
Yeah.
Players go on to be GMs. Right now, there's Chris Drury.
Sakic is the GM of Colorado. They're
Yeah.
in the playoffs. Mike Greer, who used to play for Buffalo, is with San Jose. Drury is with the Rangers. Kevin Adams, right here in Buffalo. And I'm sure that there's others.
There's got to be others.
I don't know. I don't think it's that far-fetched of if every GM had playing experience, whether it was semi-pro or professional.
In the NFL, John Elway was a GM. In fact, the
Paxton Lynch.
Yeah, but he was also the guy who went out and got Peyton Manning. So they kind of owe him a ring for that. But Elway, John Lynch over there in San Francisco. There's been examples of that kind of like, hey, I'm a former athlete and I can work a job in sports. But usually it's within your own sport, and it's like, hey, I can evaluate talent. As far as business goes, it's a difficult haul to know nothing about it and then step in and try to be involved at a high level. And I mean, you're seeing Terry Pegula take his lumps on that front right now. He's 72 years old. And as we've talked about, he has not been able to identify good front office talent. Outside of Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, I don't know of a single hire that man has made personally or been involved in that didn't result in him having to fire that person. At a certain point, it's not about not having good candidates. It's about you not having an eye for talent. This is what I'll say. He's a man who, using nothing but industry knowledge, savvy, and a $7,500 loan, built a fortune for himself 31 years ago. 31 years ago, he built the company that made him his wealth after he sold it, that ultimately allowed him to become the owner of the Buffalo Bills. He's decades removed from having any real business involvement, and that's a problem. Business moves at a different pace now, right? And based on his struggles that we've seen, maybe this is kind of an acknowledgement of like, hey, we need to start moving in a certain direction because I might be more suited to be a figurehead than an actual nuts and bolts businessman, which is fine. Totally fine. Chris, do you think Jerry Jones is actually the one over there shucking and jiving and making the business of the Dallas Cowboys work?
I don't think so, but I'm very confident while on the premise of the Dallas Cowboys facilities, he refers to himself in third person.
I pictured Jerry Jones being the type of guy who just walks around he walks around his own house, just like always kind of rubbing his hands together.
I can see that.
It's like doing a Mr. Burns just involuntarily, just like that's what I picture when I think of him.
I picture like it being like when Norm Macdonald did that sketch where he played Bob Dole on The Real World, and he just did himself in third. Like at the draft, I could see him telling Mike McCarthy, hey, get up, it's Jerry Jones's chair. You don't sit in Jerry Jones's chair.
Oh, my God. And it's funny, too, because you can go through the entire list of, owners, and you could just take one look and just kind of make up personas for these guys, and you'd probably be pretty close. I don't know. But no one's more laughable than Jerry Jones. And I don't think that Pegula wants to be that. At the same time, I think there's probably a recognition that he can't be the guy running the ship for a whole lot longer. He's not quite Ralph Wilson at this point, but he's maybe going to be relegated to that point in the future.
Yeah.
Also, there is this concept of what does the legacy planning look like here? Kim was unfortunately, after her, what did they call it, aphasia, she was deemed incompetent by a court, basically stating that she's not able to care for herself. Now, there's obviously a lot of things that go into that in terms of that ruling means a lot in terms of the medical treatment she receives, and in terms of like what she's eligible for, and just other things, which is why you would pursue something like that, or at least try to get that designation. Also, what happens is, though, it means that you're no longer capable of executing certain duties. One of which being the person who would take over the football team as his wife in the event something happens to Terry Pegula. Now, maybe this is top of mind for him because he's watched how quickly that happened.
Yeah.
Like 1 minute, Kim Pegula was growing into the face of at least, Pegula Sports and Entertainment, and trying to be the face of the Buffalo Sabres, and how quick that changed. Well, when it comes to that, then once you've seen it, right? Like it's how Brandon Beane is out there signing, Deion Jones at linebacker today. It's like, wait a minute, how many more old, washed-up linebackers do we need on this roster? And then you step back and go, well, we did kind of run into a real buzzsaw of a situation last year at the end of the year. And that was because we didn't have enough veteran linebackers on the team, on the practice squad, in training camp, all season long, getting familiarity with them. We didn't have that. So now they're making a concerted effort to never end up in that position again. The same can be true for what's happening with these front office decisions and the ownership transfer, is that they're trying to prevent, here's something that, it sounds like a far-fetched thing until you see it up close and personal. And you have to think to yourself, that could be me any day. Well, do I have the foundation laid so that this thing that makes my family wealthy can continue to churn if something were to happen to me and I too were to be incapacitated? I think by transferring some of the ownership stake to her, it puts her in line to assume those duties. And I really do like the fact that they picked someone who's not just also set up to be a figurehead like Jesse or her son Michael. An artist and a tennis player, I don't know what you're capable of in terms of being an NFL owner. The fact that his daughter's been in the building, been doing the job, spent some time on task, been learning and networking with all of the relevant characters, I think that's huge for our franchise. And I think everyone should be on the lookout for her to become a more visible part of this franchise as we go on over the next 2 years. And this stadium project ramps up. Because, Chris, the thing already sounds like there's cost overruns, there's complications they're running into.
Let me ask you this. Is Laura married? And if she is, what does her husband do? Is he somehow get involved with this too?
Dude, nothing would be happier. Nothing would make me happier if her husband is just a dude in a pair of chubbies and sandals laying on the couch all day. Just waiting for the Pegula bucks to roll in. Imagine she married a complete slacker. He goes out, he hits 18, he comes home, vacuums the house, walks the dogs, has dinner on the table, or else he gets yelled at.
You know what that sounds like, right?
What?
Sounds like you just described Aaron Quinn.
That's a low blow. I'm not going to sit here and let you put that smut on that man's name. That's brutal. I mean, he has 2 kids. You think that's a picnic?
No, it's not.
My wife left me with 2 kids for okay, so what'll happen is my wife will be like, hey, I have to get out of work, but this weekend we're busy and this is busy. I got to get my nails done at some point. They're chipping and they're cracking. And I go, well, I can't have you walking around looking like that. Notice I made it about myself. Go get your nails done. Don't worry, I'll pick up the kids. I'll get them from daycare. I'll get them home. I'll give them dinner. It's not the end of the world. That 3-hour window, man, Chris, I would love to see you pull it off.
I mean,
a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
I mean, I do it with a 9-year-old. How many times I got to tell you to turn off the lights? Come on.
You and cop and a half over there?
Yeah.
I love it.
I'll go, hey, did you turn off the light in the bathroom? Yeah. Then 20 minutes later, I go to use the bathroom, the light's on.
I like that he knows it's easier just to lie to you than to go do it. He's like, nothing's going to happen to me.
No.
It is funny. But so here we are. We're talking about the potential future owner of the Buffalo Bills. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't think it needs to be sensationalized. I've seen the tweets. Those of you out there who are talking about Kim being dead, you're kind of gross. That's Stop that. Like, let's not do that. It's more just about preparing. I think that there's an acknowledgement that if the duty were to somehow fall to her, Kim Pegula wouldn't be prepared. It's already been ruled that way. But now there's a person who's spent a year, and hopefully at the time a transition is necessary, would have spent multiple years at the helm of the team, learning all of the ins and outs of the league and who the power players are and who she needs to have a relationship with, what projects need management, and kind of who the key shareholders for those projects are within and outside of the company. I think it's the best thing for us. And Chris, to be honest, Laura Pegula being the future owner of the Buffalo Bills, like, I know that I saw a tweet today that just kind of made me cringe, because it's like, this is why everyone thinks we're cavemen. It's like, oh, the Bills, gearing up for what was it? Something about the Bills being woke and gearing up for being woke with a female owner because, it's got to be a female.
Hashtag me too.
What else do you want? You want the kid who designed hats to run the team. No. Let's. This got me fired up this afternoon. You want the kid who designed one of the ugliest hats in team history. You want that guy running the football team? We'd be out there on the field looking like the Phoenix Coyotes. He would absolutely butcher those jerseys. You guys talking about red helmets and throwback unis? Ho, 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 ho! He would absolutely destroy everything you love about this team. So knock it off. All right? Let's all take a deep breath.
Goose fraba.
It's not that big a deal. In fact, if anything, it's probably a really good thing for the Buffalo Bills. As is Greg Rousseau getting his fifth-year option picked up. Now, some of the guys who talk nonstop about this stuff have already written their articles. They've conducted podcasts debating debating what would happen to Greg Rousseau. Just because chronologically after the draft, that's kind of where your attention is forced to be. If you're one of those people who feels like they have to be at the forefront of the news and at the cutting edge of everything, which, I'm almost 40 with 2 kids. I'm not at the cutting edge of anything.
No, you're not. Definitely not.
I am a day late and a dollar short to everything. I still won't use an iPhone. I still refuse to get Apple products.
Oh, I'll never ever use an iPhone.
It's because we're both.
If Apple comes through and annihilates every other phone company, and Apple phones are the only thing that exists,
we get jitterbugs.
I just won't have a phone.
We get the elderly jitterbugs. Tell people, listen, this is the only way you can communicate with me. I'm not doing this anymore.
We go Mel Kiper. We get 5 landlines. We revolutionize the game and bring back the landline. That's what we could do.
Oh my God, I forgot about that. Mel Kiper is 5 landlines.
Yeah, you got to talk to his wife first.
Oh, God. So, I want to preface this with a tweet that 53 minutes ago, Mr. Aaron Quinn, the aforementioned Aaron Quinn, probably as he's kicked back on the couch, 2 children jumping on top of him, tweets out, 5th-year option might be the most overhyped football talking point this offseason. It's not nearly as valuable as people want to believe it is. I'd like to tell you he's wrong. He's wrong for a couple reasons, right? So when he says it's overhyped, I guess it just depends on what it is you're trying to accomplish with the 5th-year option, right? Because there's this idea that, like, a 5th-year option, everyone's like, well, it doesn't cost it's not that much cheaper than the tag. Okay, first of all, I never thought that it would come up for serious debate. I knew Greg Rousseau was going to get his option picked up, and I'm happy to see it. It's also the picking up the 5th-year option in and of itself is meaningful, and here's why. It's all about runway. That's where I want to start this whole conversation with picking it up. Whether or not you personally, right now, here today, May 2nd at 7:18 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, believe that Greg Rousseau is worthy of a multi-year contract extension. Because you understand how much defensive ends make. The concept of the 5th-year option being picked up on him is incredibly important when it comes to the amount of time you have left to make that decision. And here's why I say that. For everybody like Aaron, who basically shits on the idea and says, well, it doesn't matter. It's not that much cheaper. It is that much cheaper if you have to do it for more than 1 year. So when you franchise tag a player, Chris, can you Google this for me? What is the percentage increase from year 1 to year 2 of the franchise tag? I want to know the exact number. I already know it's larger, but I just want to know what it is. Humor me. When you tag a player who's set to be a free agent, they have to either come to a contractual agreement or hold out or play that 1 year for that set amount of money that's fully guaranteed. If you turn around and franchise tag them a second time, like as they've negotiated these CBAs, the Players Association wants to make it punitive for teams to try to do that. You know, the Kirk Cousins scenario where you just keep getting tagged. So, Chris, if we're doing this here, let's see. Consecutive franchise tags are allowed unless it's a no franchise tag. For any player tagged in 2 straight years, the team must pay 120% of the previous salary. So there's a 20% increase year over year from the franchise tag cost to the year 2 tag cost. And if you decide to do it a third time, it's a 44% increase. Now, if you've reached that point, both you and the player know you don't want them there long term. I don't know why. I don't know how you would ever get to that. I don't even know how many players have been tagged 3 times. I think that sounds like chaos.
Yeah. You want to know something else?
What?
Doug texts me. He's watching the show on his 98-inch TV in his Polish garage.
His Polish patio?
Yes.
I love it. Doug, we love you, and we miss you, brother. We miss you. You'll have to come back in and do another one of these with us soon. So, if you have the 5th year option, you can basically roll that on. And then, if at the end of that 5th year you still don't know, you're still in this Dolphins to a Tagovailoa kind of a thing where I don't really know where I want to be, and if I want to be at the high end, the low end, can we make a deal? Because we think you're worth something in the middle, you think you're worth the high end of a contract, and we just can't make it happen. You can tag that player. And the percentage increase from the number that you're paying on the 5th year option to the tag is not nearly a 20% jump. That's the benefit. There it is mechanically. That is why the 5th year option matters. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to resign the player. It just means that you've given yourself more time to make the decision. And that's good for us because if you look at this, for the Buffalo Bills right now, we're going to need some time to put this room together. It's unlikely that anybody, if you look at who's available on the market right now, Chris, you want to bring up Spotrack's free agents tracker and then sort it for Edge. If you look at the names that are over there, available for Edge players, there's very few of them left who seem like they're going to sign a deal that has any real term to it. That's what they're holding out for. It's what they're all angling for. It's why they haven't signed. But at the same time, you can't sit here and tell me that either A, we would have the appetite for that type of player, or that we could afford it. I mean, Chris, if we're looking at this, okay, so Emmanuel Ogbah, Carl Lawson. Now, those are 2 names who maybe could be had on short-term contracts if you really wanted to go multi-year with this. Yannick Ngakoue, I mean, he's 29. He's probably looking for one more deal so he can play out the last string and be done with this. Jerry Hughes at 36 years old is still floating around out there. Chris, would you want him back at this point?
Jerry Hughes? No.
Dwayne Smoot? Like, who's that? He's not getting a multi-year deal.
No.
Carlos Watkins? No. Like, you go down the list. Shaq Lawson's still out there. He couldn't get the Bills multiple times let him go out there and try to find a multi-year deal, and he couldn't get one. I just don't see anybody on this free agency list remaining. Now, they may go out and decide, hey, Carl Lawson, we think he could take a short contract, join us, flesh out the depth and with some upside now that he's another year removed from that catastrophic injury. Maybe he can be more productive in our system versus what the Jets had, and that kind of a thing. But they would do it on a 1-year basis. They wouldn't do it on a 3-year, 4-year contract that would give us at least an idea of what the future of that room looks like. And then you got to think about with the inevitable departure of Von Miller, maybe as soon as this season ends, they're going to need somebody on the roster with starting experience. Somebody has to come in here. We have AJ Epinesa, who's been a rotational player and kind of at the back end of that. He's been on the low end of the snap count. What do they have beyond Greg Rousseau? And now a lot will change between. Here's another wrinkle. A lot's going to change between now and the end of next offseason with the NCAA landscape. But if you take a quick look, just a quick look, and I hate being this guy because, Chris, nothing makes me. You think I hate mock drafts now? The people who go, whoa, here's my way too early 2025 mock draft. Yes, it is too early. Someone should drive to your house and deflate the tires in your car. You don't put that into the ether. Like it's a waste of a click. I'm not doing it.
Spin 0481. If you can't figure out if a wide receiver is that guy or not in 4 years, then there's more problems whether or not it should be a tag or a fifth-year option for the player.
Okay, but define that guy. Like, to respond to your question, what are you defining as that guy? Now, when you're talking about defensive end, it's a little bit different, especially if you're talking about wide receiver, yes, sure. It's the wide receiver, if you're not able to play the role that the team needs you to play, depending on what they wanted from you, yeah, then it's time to go. Like, yeah, we need 1 more year, cost controlled, but it's still cheaper than the tag, and then we let you go. Or if it's a player like Tremaine Edmonds, who you're just doing it because you don't want to have to tag him, but at the same time you want that extra year and you kind of already see that you're not going to be able to retain him, that's where you would go. When we're talking about the defensive end position, especially in McDermott's rotation-heavy system,
We already have backup. We got the rookie, and Kingsley Jonathan was just as it was just as good at least approaching that level of Lawson.
okay.
There you go.
So you've got a Lawson, you've got a Kingsley Jonathan. And
He
then you
also
have
said Tuhill is a younger version of Lawson.
Sure. So exactly, you have Casey Tuhill. You don't need Shaq Lawson. So realistically, if they go out there and swing for a defensive end now, after the June 1st thing, it's only going to be because there's a guy out there like a Carl Lawson who you think you could get, who you're like, oh no, we love where he is conditioning-wise. We worked him out. We think that he fits our system better than New York's, and we think in a 1-year deal, he could be an X factor for us on some Sundays. Otherwise, you don't do it. And otherwise, you stand pat with what you have and you don't make any moves at the end. But now what you've done is, and that almost makes his 5th-year extension more important, because now you're saying, I'm going to make sure that this guy stays in-house for 2 more years instead of 1 before I have to make a decision on whether or not I need to franchise tag him, because every year he's gotten a little bit better. And this is where we get into just him. But for those of you who are draft nicks, we'll just get a guy next year. Next year, if you look at the draft rankings for 2025, it's like underclassmen might come out and surprise some people, declare early. But right now, players are staying longer because of NIL money. There's only 6 players out of the 52 that are currently ranked by most draft outlets that are being talked about as potential first-round picks. And the Bills aren't really in the running if you think the team is even going to be mediocre to sort of good, which is what you'll be because you have Josh Allen. We're not really in the running for those unless you're going to trade up for one, which I don't think. If the team wasn't going to trade up for a wide receiver in this offseason, they're not trading up for a pass rusher. So with that said, you've given yourself an inside track on monitoring the growth and watching a defensive end who's done pretty well for your football team and could end up being the guy, depending on how the next few off seasons shake out, maybe one of the most veteran guys on your roster at the position. So he's also just 24. And that's interesting because we just drafted guys older than Greg Rousseau. The Bills took so many senior team captain leaders in this last draft to the point that myself and Paul Wineski and Mario Granata from #Sports were laughing about it. Like, oh, which box did he check? Is he a team captain? I've got him. See? That's why he's on their draft board. Team captain. They wanted that guy. 5 years. Oh, yep, that's it. 5th-year player. They love that. They like the fact that he's older. Greg Rousseau is actually younger than some of the guys we just drafted as rookies. So he's got so much football left in front of him, which means you can get more runway of his prime performances for your money if you're signing an extension eventually with Greg Rousseau. I also believe that it does, under this regime, maybe not for every team, but under this regime, it does kind of pave the way to a second contract. Trey White, Josh Allen, Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau, Tremaine Edmonds. These are all players who had their 5th-year options picked up. Tremaine Edmonds is the only one to not get a second contract, and that was because, Chris, he signed the richest contract ever at his position. You can't do anything about that in a year when you have no cap space.
Sean from Las Vegas, our friend Sean,
came
to the tailgate. Baby. Big issues around the league when we had the COVID year.
Yep.
So Rousseau he was off for like a whole year, didn't play, and then we drafted him. And then he's got to get back into form, in football form, and learn the NFL game there.
Sure, and you're seeing, like, he was a slow starter, but his growth every season, he gets a little bit better, and his game is different, right? And we're going to talk about that in a second, but I really like this idea, that everybody who's gotten this picked up is at least being looked at for a second contract. The only one we couldn't make happen is Tremaine Edmonds, and that was because it happened to come in a year when we didn't have any cap space. Like, I would be interested to know how many GMs across the NFL have this much success parlaying 5th-year options into contract extensions without having to use the tag. That's something I'd like to know. So obviously this bodes well for Rousseau and his family and his agent. And I mean, you could argue that he deserves it. And this is where we get into the numbers. Stylistically, this is exactly what Sean McDermott depends on for his scheme. You need big physical edge setters who can force tackles for loss and negative rushing plays while also being capable of harassing a passer. First and second in pressures on the team in 2022 and 2023 respectively, with double-digit quarterback hits. And the thing that makes him kind of fit the Bills archetype is this thing that where his pass rush style isn't predicated on winning around the edge with speed. That's not what Sean McDermott wants in his defensive ends. It's about crushing a pocket from the outside, which might sound like the same idea, but unlike someone who takes a bendy or a long looping pass rush to try to just burn the corner and turn in, if you can crush the pocket with speed, what you do is you end up eliminating some of the escape routes for a quarterback to get outside the pocket and extend a play with their legs, like we watch Josh do to other teams every single week. I see you laughing over there. What's going
on? Matty Vio, Drew, you look like Big Lots. And then our friend Joey, also used to be known as Vero Delfino. Chris has a real Andy Richter to Drew's Conan thing going on, except Drew's not a ginger or funny.
These are all true. These are all true statements. I am not funny.
And then spin 0481 again with the DN comments here, like Von Miller, who we paid $20 million to.
Yeah, Von Miller will go down, I think. If he doesn't rebound this season, it's going to go down as, and you understand, it wasn't by design. It wasn't like it was a bad call. The guy tore his ACL. The problem is he tore his ACL at 30, almost my age. If I tear my ACL, Chris, I'm not even podcasting anymore. I'm done. I'm finished. I'm going to go lay down on the floor. In fact, like if it happened tonight when I stand up out of this chair, just call the horse doctor. I'm finished. I'm not doing anything. we're done here. The real shame of it will be that he was having a monster year, and then his knee exploded, and that was maybe it. And maybe that is the way it'll play out. The mistake will be that older players with less runway for recovery are more prone to having a catastrophic injury derail their career. And it'll just be another one of those things of like, man, if that just didn't happen, where would we be? Nobody will know. It's just
Spin. Vaughn was earning his contract before he got hurt,
Exactly.
which is true.
Absolutely. So with that said, Greg Rousseau kind of stepped up in his absence. I mean, if you guys remember, Greg Rousseau had a high ankle sprain, came back from it in 2022, and actually got better. Everyone's like, oh, no, he's going to be slow. He's coming off an injury. He actually posted the best 8 weeks of his season down the stretch, coming off that injury and without Vaughn. And so he's learning. But so my thing about the scheme is that what they want to do is they want to prevent escape routes and then get in your face with their defensive tackles to create negative football plays. And apparently the only people that doesn't work against are Patrick Mahomes and what's his name? Joe Burrow. Go figure. On a team whose offense has been Jekyll and Hyde over the last 2 years. You know, Chris, 1 week they can light up the Dolphins for 31 points. And then they can go and do a game against the Giants, and it's literally they're trying to rock fight each other to find the end zone.
And then I also have to get out of the truck.
Yeah, then you're getting thrown out of a vehicle in the middle of the night on, what road was it?
I don't even remember.
I remember we were arguing over the name, and I just pulled over. I was like, all right, that's it, get out. Doug saved you that night.
Sure. I would have walked home. I would have enjoyed it more than riding in a car with you. That's for sure.
Well,
I would.
Then what I like, guys, is we all went back to my house and sat in the bar in my basement and watched the end of the game, and we didn't talk about it. Like, it just wasn't discussed. We were out of the car for at least an hour and a half in the same room together. Chris never once brought up the fact of, like, what the hell, you were going to leave me on the road? We just, all three of us just went on with our night.
Yeah.
Because that's what dudes do.
Yeah, it is.
So, our offense is wildly inconsistent. Greg Rousseau has been kind of the model of consistency, right? Like, only 2 games in 2023 where he had no quarterback pressures? Just 3 with no quarterback hurries? Like, he's not making the big splashy plays that are going to command him a multi-million-dollar salary, but he's really effective. And then the thing I look at are the guys who were drafted around him. Look at this, Chris. Joe Tryon.
Heard of him?
Remember, everybody was mad that we didn't draft him or Owe. Tryon didn't get his 5th-year option picked up. And when you look at their stats next to each other, Tryon had 105 pressures, 13 sacks, 71 hurries, and a 21% missed tackle percentage. Rousseau, 127 pressures, 19 sacks, 84 hurries, 11% missed tackle percentage, but a world's better run defender. Tryon, they were like, we don't need you because you're useless. Owe was similar, right? And a better pass rusher by statistics than Rousseau. But, yeah, there we go. Rousseau, Owe, Joe Tryon.
Peyton Turner went before Rousseau.
A part of me wonders if they wouldn't have made the move for Peyton Turner if he had fallen to him. I mean, we'll never know. They kept saying that we had options to trade out, but Greg was their guy. I don't know.
Spin.
What I do
Spin
know,
with more comments. He's all over the chat right now. I think Groot is worth 10 to 15 million, but if he can produce sacks this year, his price will go up 15 million plus.
And so this is where you've bought yourself more time to figure out, like, because what you don't want to do is do what the Buffalo Sabres did with Drew Stafford. I'll never forget this. The guy has been kind of mediocre, middling hockey player. Randomly in a contract year has a 30-goal season, and the Sabres sign him to a big contract, and he never comes close to averaging that again.
I think he had over 20. Yeah, he had 20 the next year.
And then 6.
Yeah.
And then 6. And that is why you do not want to lock yourself into being a victim of, okay, he'll go into his final year and then he'll show out next year. And then now we have to all of a sudden make a decision on a guy who we didn't think was elite, but just put up elite numbers. So what's real? Is he elite or did he just have one good year? Now we don't have to worry about that. Because if he goes out there next year and builds off this last season, continues to show that arc of production and turns 25, you still have him under control at a reasonable number, and then you can start the negotiation process. Because now you've decided that you already kind of know where he's going to be in the hierarchy of defensive end salaries. It's a no-lose move for the Buffalo Bills. Rousseau outproduced Tryon. Owe is interesting because he's only 6'5", like 240 pounds. Rousseau is 6'7", more than 270. He is the D-end you need to make Sean McDermott's system work. So, of course, they would prioritize him over Owe. And I bet you if you put Owe in our scheme, he would have struggled. He would have been like a less run-savvy Jerry Hughes, which I don't know what that does for us as a football team. In fact, if anything, it might have precipitated them having to spend more money on more high-dollar free agents, which would have cost us more of the core of our football team. So, if and when he gets his deal, it'll set an interesting precedent. Not just for him, not just for the time being, but also in Bills team history. Because when I was prepping for the show, guys, I have to crack a fresh beer for this. And I do love the fact that Chris, knowing that Nate Geary is going to be on in just an hour or two with us to do our annual draft recap, stocked the fridge with these mango peach Kolsch's, which I generally think are disgusting. Like, I'm scrambling here to find Montucky's.
So they're in there. There's Montucky's in there. So I'm at Wegmans today buying that. And the two women that are like manning the self-checkout, they point to the 12-pack and they go, "Are those any good?" And I wouldn't be caught dead drinking these. And they both look at me like, then why are you buying it? Because I have friends within the podcasting community that have the taste of somebody from North Tonawanda.
I'm about to dip my toe into this water, and I'm just ready for it to be disgusting. God. Okay. The Buffalo Bills defensive end history is what that beer tastes like. In a glass. Like, that's it. Get this out of here. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I need whiskey. The history of our team's defensive end room, guys, if you were, like, Bills, your defensive ends, woof. It's like the book The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. It's just riddled with tragedies, a lot of despair, frustratingly avoidable mistakes. I was like, what tragic novel have I read that I can correlate this to? It just leaves you with a bad taste in your mouth.
Sean from Las Vegas, you drink one of those for breakfast with cold pizza. That's it. And then spin. Isn't that wasting beer? Just chug it and get it over with.
All right, Sean, for you. Or spin. All right, for you.
There you like a true champ.
Ah,
Does it taste more peach or mango?
it tastes like I licked your carpet. It's awful. It tastes like someone spilled something fruity on this rug and I'm licking it up. That's what it tastes like.
All right.
The Bills have only drafted.
Weak chug.
Well, no, because I can't chug this. It's too just like the.
Do you want it in a glass?
It's thin and it's bitter. Like on the back end, it's still that Genesee beer bitter that I can't. I can't get. You can't chug this stuff. You'd think with mango peach it would be sweet, but it's not. Like the sweetness only lasts for a millisecond, and it's just followed up by this really bitter, thin beer that has almost no carbonation to it, and then it has a really bitter aftertaste. It all sucks. It's all terrible. Everything about it stinks. 9 defensive end or edge players have been drafted by the Buffalo Bills since 2000, besides Rousseau. 4 of them were granted contract extensions over that time span. Do you know who they are, Chris? Just off the top of your head.
Since what year?
Since 2000, turn of the century. 24 years.
Let's see. I'm going to go because he's got a touchdown. Ryan Dennehy. That's on there.
Is that Brian Dennehy?
I said Ryan.
Yeah. Brian Dennehy is an actor.
I said Ryan.
Ryan Denny.
Okay. Dennehy. It doesn't matter. You caught a fucking touchdown pass from Mormon against the Seahawks.
I'll never forget that. He acted. He was on the sideline talking to the ref It was the play from The Longest Yard where like they fake like somebody has a helmet malfunction.
Yeah.
He's over there talking to the ref as if they're just having a casual conversation. Nobody on the Seahawks is even looking at him, and they snap the ball, and Mormon just throws it to him.
Now, did you tell me it's since 2000?
2000.
I don't think John McCargo's not a part of that, is he?
He's a defensive tackle.
Okay. I mean,
edge players.
Calling him a defensive tackle, that's a stretch.
We didn't extend him. So
Aaron Schobel.
Aaron Schobel.
And those are the only two I can think of.
Chris Kelsey.
I remember him.
Yeah. And AJ Epinesa. Those are the 4. Now here's what's funny. Schobel and Kelsey played their entire careers in Buffalo. Kelsey actually played more games than Schobel by almost an entire season. Ryan Denny, in 113 games, he only started 31 times. Like, that's it. He once had 6 sacks in one season with 0 starts.
That's insane. Vero Delfino. Guys who secretly love Seagram's escapes, thumbing their noses at a beer is wild, though.
Exactly. Then think about how bad. Look at this. I have a Seagram's right here. I would drink this before I would drink this before I drink that. Unfortunately, I'm saving that for later. That's going to be for tonight's podcast with Nate. So, of the guys that didn't see a second contract, oh my God. Eric Flowers was a first-round pick who only played for our team for 2 seasons. He had 5 career sacks across 3 different teams. He has 1/3 of AJ Epinesa's career production. Tell me Eric Flowers might not be the biggest bust in Bills history.
I do remember that we were talking about this years ago on a show, and you thought I was talking about Eric Flowers, the tackle.
Yes.
And you did not know that Eric Flowers, the defensive end, existed. Kind of in the same light that you thought Steve Tasker was a linebacker.
Still is. Best linebacker of all time. Chris Ellis was a 3rd rounder who was only in the NFL for 15 games across 3 seasons. I'm not even talking on a roster. Like, just not like, oh, he was only a Buffalo Bill for... In the NFL for 15 games. We drafted him in the 3rd round.
Spin, again, Maben. But he was listed as a linebacker, right?
No. Aaron Maben drafted 1 pick ahead of Brian Arakpo. I derailed an entire house party over this. It's still egregious. He went on, like, Arakpo goes on to have a really productive career for Tennessee. Aaron Maben finished his career with 1 more sack than Eric Flowers. Shaq Lawson wasn't a bust. I mean, he's still NFL adjacent in the NFL.
A journeyman, as they would call it.
Buffalo tried to retain him, right? Like, you'll remember that.
Yeah, and then he went to Miami.
He had a career year, his final year in Sean McDermott's system, took more money, bet on himself, and rapidly found his way into the NFL veteran minimum club. Look at him out there now in the free agent market, just hoping someone throws him a milli. What are we as a franchise doing when it comes to that position? We don't draft it well. We just don't. Like Bruce Smith, Chris, that's the last good one.
I mean, he was first overall.
First overall. So do we have to be that bad again to get a good pass rusher on this team?
I don't know. Somebody in the chat might know this. I'll have to look it up. I could also bring up Phil Hansen. He was pretty good.
Phil Hansen.
He was good
Sure.
in relief of Bruce Smith when he was injured. And then I don't even, I mean, I'm like 9 years old at the time, so I don't even know if they're playing opposite sides of each other and just collapsing pockets. But I'm pretty sure Phil Hansen was not bad. Got to chase it.
I've never had to chase a beer with whiskey before. That's ridiculous. This thing sucks. I want to close it with this. The team has drafted and extended one single productive edge starter in the last 24 years, and that's Aaron Schobel. Do you guys remember Aaron Schobel? He will go down in history as the guy with the most individual sacks by one player on Tom Brady of all time. He was a Patriot killer. He just had great games when it came to them. Aaron Schobel was a hoss. And yet, he doesn't get a whole lot of respect. Like, I don't see people wearing, I see people wearing Thurman jerseys. I see people, obviously that makes sense. I see the Reed jerseys. I see Molds jerseys. I have I've got a Darius jersey. Why aren't there more Aaron Schobel jerseys still being worn around Buffalo?
I don't know. He's one of the. He didn't play for that long. I have his stats up on
he had an
the
8-year
screen.
career.
His last season he played all 16 games and had 10 sacks.
Yeah,
and then he retired.
Like he hadn't had double-digit sacks in 3 years, and then just randomly.
It was probably I'm like, I'm not getting to the playoffs anytime soon. Going into the 2010s, fuck this. I'm retiring.
Are you saying we killed Aaron Schobel?
100%.
Damn it. Well, I'll tell you what. As true as that might be, at the end of the day, Aaron Schobel is the last truly productive defensive end that we've drafted that you can even try to comp to Greg Rousseau. We would have continued. Chris, if Aaron Schobel had wanted to keep playing, we would have let him.
Yeah.
We're going to do the same with Greg Rousseau. I guarantee you he's getting a contract extension. It's just a matter of when and how much and how they can work it. I think the Stephon Diggs trade was one of these things of paving the way to future cap solvency so that you can make these decisions, so that if you decide Spencer Brown's the guy, you can keep him. If you decide Greg Rousseau's the guy, you can keep him, because guess what? They're all under the age of 30 and he's not. It's time. It's time to start turning it over. And while you can argue, and some of you will, feel free to let me know in the comments. Although I'm not going to read them. Chris will.
Yeah.
Let me know what you
Tweet
think.
at us.
Reach out.
That's
on Twitter,
how you do it.
At Rockpile Report on Twitter. Let me know what you think about Rousseau going forward. Not what you've seen, but what you think, because it's going to tell me you did a little bit of research. It's going to tell me that you looked at the curve, saw the ascension, and go, hey, I think that this is sustainable. Where do you think he's going to fall in terms of that hierarchy? Because we've already talked about how for our own team, there is no comp. Like, you're either a 10-sack-a-year guy that we drafted or you're garbage. So he's somewhere in the middle. In terms of NFL production, where do you think he can be, and what kind of contract do you think he deserves? I think that's it, but I like the fact that we get an extra year to have to figure that out. I don't know about you, Chris. I like options, don't you?
I do, and I would prefer, because we did it with Sabres adjacent. Tage Thompson put out, 30-plus goals, and then we gave him the contract, which I think outside of this year, because there's an injury, he's been living up to it. So I would get Groot that extension in as soon as possible, because like Spin said in the comments, if he's getting like 10 to 15 sacks, his price is going up.
Sure.
So get him now, get him signed now while the price is lower.
Guys, first of all, awful beer, Chris.
Not the one in your hand.
No, I needed a Montucky to wash the taste out of my mouth. Great night of podcasting. Thank you for everybody who tuned in live. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for giving. You guys added to the conversation. I like doing this. I'm happy we finally found a vehicle for it. We finally have the technology to pull it off inside of the in-house running multicam. Kudos to you, Chris. Dude, raise a glass.
Yeah.
Raise
Well,
your
my
glass.
glass is empty, but
I'll drink to you.
we're going to be live next week with Anthony Prohaska from Cover One when the schedule gets released. So we're gonna go through that next week with Prohaska, allegedly, unless he cancels.
Guys,
who knows?
It's been fun, but we got to get out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. And this has been your Rock Pop Report Live. Thanks for showing up.